Hi, welcome to my channel. I post lots of videos about different pets, anything from cats, dogs, rabbits, birds, and dart frogs and geckos. So if you're interested in any of that, please subscribe for more videos. Today my video is going to be about dart frog care, so I hope you enjoy. So just some facts about dart frogs. In the wild, dart frogs are extremely poisonous, but when they're kept in captivity, they lose their toxicity because we can't feed them the same stuff that they can eat in the wild. In the wild, they eat ants, which give them this poisonous quality, and so in captivity, poison dart frogs are actually harmless. It's okay to touch them. We won't get sick or poisoned, but we still don't want to touch them because it's very bad for the frogs. The frogs and our skin, they don't match. The frogs will, their skin will dry out if they get the oil from our skin on them. So we really don't want to touch them at all. Even though it is safe for us to touch them, it isn't safe for the frogs. So dart frogs, they're pretty small, but they can live over a decade. The smallest kind of frogs is the thumbnail frogs. I have some of these guys. They're hard to get on camera. They're very shy. These have been known to live upwards of a decade. The larger frogs can live over 2 decades long, and there's been reports of some frogs actually living over 25 years in captivity. So getting a dart frog can be a very long-term commitment. Keeping dart frogs, the best thing to keep them in is a vivarium. A naturalistic vivarium is kind of like a terrarium, but it has its own little ecosystem. So there are live plants, soil, and drainage to keep the soil from becoming too saturated, and bugs that will consume the waste made by the plants and the frogs themselves. So this kind of creates a balance in the environment and maintains a clean, safe place for the frogs to live. And it makes care a lot easier because you don't have to clean the tank or take out the frog's waste. The only thing that I have to do is clean the glass and wipe down the glass just so I can see in clear, because when I miss the tanks, water sprays and the frogs climb up on the glass and leave some dirt marks. So that's the only real cleaning maintenance that I do have to do. What I usually like to do is give 5 to 10 gallons. I usually try to go on the 10 gallons of space per frog. So if you have 2 frogs, you should have a 20-gallon tank. And you want to have a lot of plants, a lot of foliage in the plants, and you want to have a lot of hiding places for your frogs. And remember that the more space is always better than less space. Give your frogs as much space as possible. When you have more space, will have healthier frogs, and you'll have bolder frogs, frogs that come out more and allows you to see them more. Even though they have more hiding spaces, they still will come out more. Dart frogs, one of the most important things is to keep high humidity and lots of vegetation. So you want to be able to mist the frogs daily or purchase a mister that will mist the frogs. You need to keep the humidity about 80% or higher. And when you're setting up your tank, I'll talk a bit more about temperature and humidity, but when you're setting up your tank, I recommend setting it up a few months, at least 4 weeks, so at least 1 month before you actually put your frogs in. I recommend doing this because it creates a more stable environment. You're creating this little kind of piece of jungle. You're having your cleanup crew, your bugs that are cleaning up the plants and the mess from the frogs. You want those to build and be established in your tank before you add the frogs. The frogs will eat these little bugs, so if you don't have them established or don't give them a chance to establish, you're going to have to keep adding more and more in, or you're going to end up having a tank with no cleanup crew. You also want your plants to be able to grow in. So not in my experience, not all plants have made it, even if they are plants that do well in these type of environments. Some tanks the plants will do really well, and some tanks the plants won't do as well. So just because they're different shapes and different sizes, the tanks that I have, and they're in slightly different locations of the room, the conditions are a little bit different. So you never really know what's going to work and what isn't, but when you have an established tank, you can see which plants are doing well, you can change it up, you can replace it without having frogs in it, without worrying about disturbing the frogs. So you get that tank and you understand that the temperature is correct, the humidity is correct, you know how many times you have to mist it to keep that humidity up. You know how long you should keep the lights on to keep the temperature the way you want it to be. It just makes sure that you have the right conditions for the frogs and you have the tank in the best possible shape it can be. So these cleanup crews that I talk about are called springtails and isopods. These are two little bugs that you'd never see when they're in your tank, but they'll be doing a lot of work for you. So when it comes to temperature and humidity, like I mentioned, we need high humidity and a stable temperature. Frogs do like to have a drop in temperature at nighttime, and this just occurs naturally as the sun goes down, my house starts to cool down, and the frogs' lights go off. Their temperature just naturally drops. This might be different in your area or your room that you're going to keep your frogs in. So again, this is why it's a good idea to have your tank established before you bring the frogs in. You can test to see what the temperature is going to be doing. And your humidity, you want to stay 80% or 80% or higher at all times. And your temperature should stay between 70 and 80 degrees. So I find it's easiest to keep humidity in when you have mostly all glass with just a very small screen lid. The Exoterras tend to have a full screen lid. It's harder to keep humidity in, but you also need that screen lid to circulate air. I've had some tanks where I did not have a screen lid, I had a glass lid, and there was not enough air circulation in. If you have this, you could possibly get a small fan inside there, but I just would recommend having a portion of the lid a screen. But just keep an eye on the temperature and the humidity at all times and make sure that there are no drastic changes. When it comes to feeding dart frogs eat a lot of different little bugs. The main thing that they eat, or the main bug that I supply my frogs, and I think most other dart frog keepers supply their frogs, are fruit flies. So these are flightless fruit flies. You have to build your own cultures, but that's a whole nother topic. But it's also something that you should do and make sure that you are capable of doing before you get your frogs. So these are fruit fly cultures that you will have to have in constant supply, and it is something that you will need to create more of every week. Dart frogs can also eat springtails and isopods, which I mentioned are your cleanup crew. They can also eat other small bugs. I have fed mine the pinhead crickets, and they enjoy that. You're also going to want to make sure that you dust your bugs with multivitamin and calcium supplements. Josh's Frogs has a lot of really good suggestions on their site. I can leave a link to that's where I buy my supplements. When it comes to plants, there's a wide variety of plants that you can use. Pretty much any tropical plants, but when you are buying plants from a plant store, you want to make sure that your plants do not have any fertilizers or chemicals or anything on them. The best thing to do is to buy a plant and have it established in another area of your house and take clippings and fresh leaves to plant in your terrarium for your frogs. So you kind of this is another reason why you need to get your tank before you put your frogs in. You're going to start with small clippings and your plants are going to have to grow out. If you are putting a full plant in straight from a plant store, ask the store what they are doing for chemicals and fertilizers, and make sure that you wash the leaves and wash your plant off before you put them in. So when it comes to maintenance, there isn't actually that much to do once you have the tank set up. The only things that you will really be doing is misting daily, feeding, pruning plants, cleaning the glass, and that's about it. And creating the fruit fly cultures so that your frogs will always have constant food to eat. But I actually think keeping dart frogs is relatively easy once you have a very good system in place and you stick to that system and that schedule, and you always make sure that you have fly cultures and you are taking maintenance on your plants. Thanks for watching. Bye.